Okay, how we doing, folks? Friday, September 2nd, 2016, continuing with our NFL preview. Today we are discussing the NFC North. Want to make two notes. I would have had the Minnesota Vikings in the playoffs prior to the Teddy Bridgewater injury. Now that he is injured, I am not putting the Minnesota Vikings in the playoffs. With that being said, I had the Washington Redskins at 9-7 originally out of the playoffs when I did the NFC East preview. Teddy Bridgewater, the injury had not happened yet. So we were moving the Washington Redskins into the playoffs because of the spot that opened up with the Teddy Bridgewater injury. So we wanted to make note of that. We also want to make note that the NFC North teams are playing both the AFC South as well as the AFC or the NFC East, excuse me. At the top of the division, we're starting with the Green Bay Packers. I have the Packers having a very good season this year at 12-4. Well, they went 10-6 last year. There are some question marks there. However, you do have Jordy Nelson coming back, and I'm looking at their schedule. I mean, you could say 1 through 16, the games they're not very difficult. Just look at their first 10 though. At Jacksonville, at Minnesota without Teddy Bridgewater, at Detroit, at the Giants, home for the Giants, home for the Cowboys, home for the Bears, at Atlanta, home for the Colts, at Tennessee, at Washington, at Philadelphia. Then they close with their remaining six, or excuse me, with their last five. The Texans, Seahawks, at the Bears, the Vikings, and the Lions. So their last five, while it gets a little harder, does not get that much more difficult. Looking at their first 11, I see a couple potential losses. The Giants, possibly the Lions if they get rolling, and the Colts. But, I wouldn't expect them to lose all three of those games. So that's why I have them going 12-4. Of course, we talked about Jordy Nelson coming back. That's going to be very critical for this team in their passing attack. They like to use many weapons. Randall Cobb, of course, is very good. Eddie Lacy, it appeared he had gotten in shape. Now it looks like he put the weight back on, so we'll have to see how the running game progresses. He survived the cuts thus far, so we don't know, and maybe he'll be one of the last people cut, but you'd like to get him in shape. Brandon Burks is a rookie. I don't know what they're going to do running the ball if they are struggling with, or if Eddie Lacy is struggling with his weight. As far as the defensive side of the ball, I'd really like this team to address their secondary. I don't think it's at the level it should be. Sam Shields is their number one guy at the cornerback. But, I don't. Micah Hyde is a pretty good safety. Haha Clinton Dix is coming into his own, but at cornerbacks outside of Sam Shields, I have to wonder about this team. They lost Tramon Williams, so their linebacker's not very impressive, except for Clay Matthews, of course. But Clay Matthews is, he plays a linebacker, but he's more of a pass rusher. I mean, Julius Peppers, 36. I always admired Julius Peppers, but I think that this may be the end of him. But we'll have to see. I haven't really doubted Julius Peppers in the past, but I'm just getting a feeling that now is the time where he's going to start coming down. But with this offense, with the Teddy Bridgewater injury, there's no reason to expect that the Packers are not going to win the division, and especially that schedule. Green Bay Packers 12-4 division champions. My second place team, I have going 8-8. The Detroit Lions. Of course, the Lions got off to that horrendous start last year. They came along, were able to finish. I believe it was 7-9. They started out like 1-7. Jim Caldwell kept them together. Yeah, they finished 7-9 last year, and allowed that team to finish with some respectability and certainly move up the rankings and not just be a laughing stock last year, which they were heading to. He had a good year before then. Of course, with the Detroit Lions, they have lost Calvin Johnson to retirement. He was a big part of that offense. Him and Matt Stafford. Stafford is, he's not inconsistent really during a season much. He's inconsistent season to season. One season will be very good. The next season you won't know, and he'll turn the ball over. I like Amir Abdullah at running back, running the ball and also returning kickoffs. You look at this receiving core though, without Calvin Johnson anymore. Golden Tate has been a solid pro throughout his career. He's more of your, you know, like prototypical number two guy. A guy who's only 5'10". He's not that big physical receiver. He's a guy who can do his damage when you have a guy like a Calvin Johnson picking up, um, all the double teams and things like that. Let's see how he can handle being the number one guy. Marvin Jones coming over from Cincinnati, I don't know. I don't see it. Ezekiel Ansah, I think, is really improving. I would expect him to come along, and I'm looking for him to have a good year. They also got Wallace Gilberry, nice addition as well. DeAndre Levy, or Levy, however you want to pronounce it. Remember, he was hurt a lot last year, and that's why I think Detroit struggled. If he can stay healthy this year, that'll be very advantageous to them. Secondary, though, again, this is another team with a poor secondary. Darius Slay. I mean, I don't. You look. Glover Quinn is all right. Tavon Wilson, yeah. The two safeties, they can certainly do some things. Don Carey, but poor secondaries as well, and you're going to need that when you play a team like the Green Bay Packers. Everybody has a pretty easy schedule because they're playing both the AFC South, which is a pretty weak division, and the NFC East is not too spectacular as well. So that's why these teams can make some noise and potentially Detroit in the playoffs. I have them missing the playoffs though, at 8-8. Third place team, 7-9. The Minnesota Vikings, even without Teddy Bridgewater. They haven't addressed anyone else at quarterback. It looks like they're going to go with Sean Hill. I'm still surprised they're not bringing a guy in. But hey, it is what it is. Sean Hill, he's been there, and you're going to have to ride with him. Obviously, they're going to rely heavily on Adrian Peterson this year. He is 31. Let's see what he still has left. He hasn't shown any breakdown, but, you never know at this point. Receiving core, Stephon Diggs, I like. Cordell Patterson is a good return guy. He has not lived up to being the wide receiver they would hope for. Laquan Treadwell, a very good rookie, and I was expecting a lot bigger things with him, opening up the play action, or just opening up the playbook, that is, maybe with play action with Teddy Bridgewater. But with Teddy Bridgewater being out, I expect this team to get very conservative as they were last year, and I don't look for Laquan Treadwell to put up big numbers. So don't judge Laquan Treadwell off of the numbers he puts up this season. On the defensive side of the ball, Anthony Barr is one of the best in the business, if not the best, at linebacker. Their secondary, Xavier Rhodes, I believe, has really come into his own. Of course, they still have Terrence Newman, a guy who is 37 but can certainly play the nickel. Captain Munnerlyn, another guy, 5'9". You're looking at guys who are looking to ball hawk. And they have guys like Ante Exum, who's a safety, very good. They got Michael Griffin, so let's see what he can add. Harrison Smith is good as well. This is a team with a very good secondary. Jabari Price, I'd expect to line up opposite Xavier Rhodes. Rhodes, a guy 6'1", 218, has the size, and I believe he's come into his own. He's another one of those Florida State guys. You look at Jalen Ramsey just being drafted. Of course, you got Antonio Cromartie from the years back. They usually produce those big physical cornerbacks. So their defense is solid, and I believe that'll keep them in it. Let's see what happens. I'm going to look at their schedule right now. I mean, just to see if there's any way where, their schedule allows them to get off to a decent start, where they can maybe do something. It doesn't look like it, because while they open up in Tennessee against the Titans, then you got the Packers, the Panthers, the Giants, and the Texans. All three, of course, the Packers are in their division, but those are all three teams I'm expecting to win the division. So it's going to be very hard for them. It softens up a bit after that, but you look at it without Teddy Bridgewater. You got the Eagles, Bears, Lions, Redskins, then the Cardinals, but Lions again, Cowboys, Jaguars. So it definitely softens up, but I see this as being a problem with that schedule in the early part of the season. So 7-9 may be a stretch as well. But there you have it with the Minnesota Vikings going 7-9 this season, and of course the last place team I have going 6-10. That's the Chicago Bears. They went 6-10 last year. Now you have a very good coach in John Fox. We all know that. Jay Cutler. I'm not the biggest Jay Cutler guy, of course. I do think he's been unfairly criticized for that playoff game. What was that? That's like 6 years now. The guy had a torn ACL and didn't come back in the game. I mean, what do you want him to do? So I think he's still unfairly judged for that. I just never thought he was that good to begin with. But Uh, he's got to keep the turnovers down. That's one thing that has just plagued him through his entire career. Let's see if he can do that this year. But I believe he wants it bad enough. I don't really question the guy's heart. I question the way he goes about it. Did only have all 11 interceptions last year. Offensively, they did lose Matt Forte. Going to rely heavily on Kadeem Carey, I would suppose, to run the ball a lot. Jaquiz Rogers is a short guy, only 5'6". He's more of that Darren Sproles, Danny Woodhead, Lance Dunbar, Deion Lewis, those small running backs in the short passing game. Alshon Jeffrey is a solid wide receiver. Of course, that's who Jay Cutler is going to be going to. I think just a younger, lesser version of Brandon Marshall. Didn't have 1,000 yards last year, only 54 receptions. He's going to have to step his game up. They need him. Eddie Royal is solid as well. Of course, played with Jay Cutler in Denver. Offensive line, not good. It's really as simple as that. So we know Cutler needs to be protected, and when he's under pressure, that's when he really tends to struggle. This team's secondary is good. Kyle Fuller is a solid cornerback. Tracy Porter may move to safety this year. That's a pro's pro. He knows what to do back there. He can find the ball, and he can certainly turn the ball over. Everywhere else, though, you got nothing that's jumping out at you. Their defensive line is pretty weak. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything there. Leonard Floyd, a guy they drafted, he should help them at linebacker, but Lamar Houston, good pass rusher, still only 29. Pernell McPhee, they got some pros in there. Danny Trevathan coming over, he's clearly their best defensive player, so that's where it is as far as their defense. They got a couple decent pros, but just not enough. John Fox, he can coach a defense, so he may be able to get this team playing well, but Jay Cutler just way too inconsistent in his career, and I don't see that happening. All right, so the NFC North, we have the Packers 12-4 winning the division. Detroit Lions 8-8 second place. Minnesota Vikings 7-9, of course struggling with the Teddy Bridgewater injury, and the Chicago Bears at 6-10 coming in last. So Monday, because we're going through the weekend, we will bring you the AFC North. Be sure to stay tuned for that, and of course any other flash news alerts that come across. And please remember to subscribe. Thank you. Have a good one.